UFO Roundtable. The UFO Thinker and Pursuit of the Paranormal podcasts.
Okay, so welcome back to the monthly Roundup Roundtable. Back once again, myself, Frank, UFO Thinker podcast, part of the Calling All Beings Cab Network. Once again, joined by Ash Ellis from UFO Identified / Pursuit of the Paranormal podcast. How are you doing, Ash?
Very good, Frank. Good to see you again.
All right, it's always a pleasure. I am slightly more hoarse than usual, as I'm sure listeners with a keen ear will have already picked up on. I'm going to be muting myself when I cough. That one caught me by surprise. But if any,
That was just to prove it. That was just to got to prove
yeah, it's just sympathy, wasn't it?
It's for the authenticity. You see, I've got to show that it's a genuine article. But for future coughs, I will be muting myself or attempting to. So if anybody hears me, just go quiet for a few seconds, just so you know why. And of course, we are once again joined as well by Dave. How are you doing, Dave?
Sorry, I dived in a bit there, Frank. Yeah, you've got a bit of the Rod Stewart's going on there, haven't you? I thought you were going to break into song for a minute listening to. Yeah.
I know I'll have to record a single whilst I've got the hoarseness, like that old episode of Friends.
Oh, very good. Yeah, I'm in good form, and I'm looking forward to this. The merry month of January. We're just gone. We're talking about.
Yeah, well, that's it. And I tell you what, it feels a long time since New Year, doesn't it? Yeah. I suppose it has been, because we're actually slightly later doing this roundtable. We're sort of into February now, aren't we? So it'll actually go out to listeners at the end of the first week of Feb rather than the week before, as it normally would be. But still, we are here. And two of the kind of main predictions that we were talking about and that I mentioned on my solo pods and whatnot as well is the predictions have fizzled out spectacularly, like a soggy firework, damp squib. I'd been hearing these strong indications on the grapevine about the videos from the Soul Foundation and Grush's op-ed, and obviously at this point, unless anything's happened today that I've not seen, both of those have failed to materialise for various reasons. And I think it's just that, as we often say, the situation behind the scenes is quite fluid, always changing. And one thing that can happen can throw timescales that we might have expected off considerably, and the reaction to an event can sort of change the anticipated arrival of other things and whatnot. Still two interesting areas to watch for. I think we'll just have to keep an eye on that though and see when it actually happens. Have you got any indications, Dave? Anything you've seen about any of that?
I think you've been a bit miserable there, Frank, to be honest with you. It's only just been a bit of a delay. Christ, I thought you were going to say, no, it's all gone, we might as well go home. No, I mean, what we do know is, but clearly on the Soul Foundation, they totally underestimated how long it takes. And you told me this, Frank, as well, and you added to it because you've got a bit of expertise, how long it takes to edit all the videos. Forever, it only takes one person to say, I'm not happy and whatever, and there's loads of them. There's hours of stuff to go through. So I think that's why there's a delay there. It's not that they're trying to keep it, not that you were saying that, but I don't think it's anything about secrets. It's just physically getting the time to do it, yeah? And and we've heard about we heard that it's going to be the op-ed. I reckon there's still some stuff going on behind the scenes. I think this op-ed is going to be really significant, which we'll maybe get into when we get on a bit later on. Although I recognise, though, all joking about, I could be being optimistic here, but the signs are that we said, didn't we, at Christmas, that if there wasn't, with the act not being passed, it's going to all start getting a bit freaky now or whatever. More whistleblower stuff and all the rest of it. So we should start seeing that in the next, I say if we haven't seen anything by the end of March, interesting. Maybe things aren't going quite as well as planned. The team disclosure. So no, I don't know much is the answer, your answer.
Yeah, I think, like you say, understandable delays on the Soul videos thing and not entirely unexpected. Grush's op-ed, though, there was pretty clear indications that would be the first week of January, and obviously that has been delayed, hasn't it? So, for various reasons probably, but we'll keep an eye on that. But the one thing that we definitely were treated to in January was the another high noon drop from Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp. And this was the Jellyfish. And I think that was an interesting one that we saw happening, and been quite interested to finally get into this, because it's actually quite some time ago now that it actually came out. We briefly touched on it, Dave, when we were talking a little while ago, but obviously we'll go through a little bit more detail now. So just a quick rundown of it. I'm sure everybody's probably sick to the back teeth of the thing by this point, but I'll just go through some of the key points of the case, just in case anybody's not aware, or a bit of a refresher. So it was actually posted on the Weaponized site on January the 8th, 2024, of course. And this is basically footage of a military filmed UAP incursion, actually within a United States Joint Operations base. And this particular UAP allegedly, I think I should probably say, displayed transmedium capability, and certainly has been officially designated by the United States intelligence agencies as a UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena. And that designation apparently is still the case to this day. There's no explanation being put forward to explain it as anything prosaic. It actually took place in October 2017 during the night. And it was, as I say, this joint operations base in Iraq where it actually took place. There were various devices apparently that picked it up: an MX-20 targeting system, a FLIR, and of course there was video of the actual object itself. And there was this reconnaissance platform involved, a Lockheed Martin Persistent Threat Detection System, aerostat, otherwise known as PTDS. So the actual object itself was filmed at this base, tracked for a period of time, I think quite a while, about half an hour, I think, in total, roughly. And it moved through this military base and eventually arrived at a body of water where apparently it did what's described as a controlled descent, actually going into the water. And then after a period of about 17 minutes, the object re-emerged from the body of water and shot off at an extreme rate of speed out of the range of the platform that was observing it. So obviously, with all of that said, it remains unexplained, and it sounds like a pretty interesting case. Now, one thing that kind of struck me about this when it came out, and I've made a few sort of as I was making my notes, is that how many times over the last couple of years we've actually talked about these cases brought forward by Corbell and Knapp. At the end of the day, I think personally, whatever we think of these cases, and obviously we've discussed them quite a lot, and some of them I think are not worth a carrot, such as the Christmas lights one from a year or so ago. Others, at least in my opinion, more interesting, like the Mosul orb. And I think whatever we make of these cases, or whatever explanation we might have, there's no denying that Jeremy and George have brought out quite a lot of cases, and I find them interesting. As we've often said, when these cases come out, it's interesting to see the reaction and think about what they might be. And what to make of each case is kind of the fun bit, everyone on UFO Twitter is getting stuck in Sherlock Holmes for the day, trying to figure it out and that kind of thing. So I'd be interested to see what you guys think. I think one thing that's worth pointing out as well is that the video, there's kind of various bits and pieces been discussed about this, but the really interesting aspects of the case are the transmedium capability and the fact that it shot off at an extreme rate of speed. Unfortunately, those particular aspects are not on the video which is available. Extremely frustratingly, and that kind of thing. However, there have been people who have, supposedly been in touch with Corbell and Knapp, and who have said that video exists of those parts, but the video was confiscated and whatnot. So before I waffle on anymore, I think I'm approaching a cough. So, Dave, what are your thoughts on all of this?
Oh, glad you asked me first, because I think Ash might have a different view. So I'll go with a positive. I might be wrong here, Ash. I may be doing you a disservice, but I'll go with a more positive, and I'm going to see what Ash thinks. And we missed you, Ash, the other day when we were talking about this, because we wanted your take. Oh yeah, well, we wanted your take on it, so more seriously. So anyway, I'll give you my view. I was talking to Frank Milburn for enough about this, and he says they've got a fixed balloon. They have the fixed balloons, like the old balloons in World War II. It's suspended above the base. They have a platform on which I didn't know. So they got these multiple platforms. So he's telling me that, which I thought was quite interesting. So it's dedicated to surveilling the base. I mean, I think they've got a pretty good track record of getting stuff from people, but it seems to be real. You know, whatever. I know the quality can be variable, and we can argue about it. So I thought, like you, it was quite a good one, Frank. The DOD have not denied it, from what I can say, although they've taken a bit more circumspect view now. They're sort of not really confirming it like they used to, but they haven't denied. I got the impression it was proper footage anyway. They got the footage from people who were on the base, apparently, and there was also somebody interviewed on the base, and they got over multiple confirmations. It's quite funny. Greenstreet interviewed him thinking he was going to support rubbish it, and then he said, "Oh no, actually, it's quite true." And he got upset, didn't he? Greenstreet on Twitter, a bit of a meltdown on Twitter, I seem to remember. But anyway, that was quite amusing. I think it was officially classified as unidentified, so at the time they couldn't identify what it was. It wasn't. So you would think they would have ruled out anything obvious. Another interesting thing, according to this guy was interviewed, and then according to Knapp and Corbell, was that the film was confiscated straight away. They burst into the office, told people to sign NDAs, told them not to talk about it. This was the police on the base. They didn't say it to the other allies. They didn't show it. That suggests to me that it wasn't nothing or prosaic. Now, this is circumstantial. I get that. I'm not saying it's proof positive. As you said, Frank, it was a bit annoying that I saw the two videos, the one we've all seen going through the base, and one where it's a bit more over water, but like it's quite frustrating. But the big one's missing, isn't it? And apparently it flew upwards very quickly. One thing for me that was interesting, but it was only picked up in thermal, yeah, only in thermal, and it wasn't visible to the naked eye. You saw it going past some dogs, and I think some people, they didn't notice it. Now, one thing for me, just on a simple point, we haven't got anything that I know of technologically that can be invisible. We can make invisible. If it was physically passing past, you'd see it, yeah? I know you can make it blind to sensors, but we haven't got anything that's invisible. So if it truly was just in the thermal spectrum, I think that's interesting in itself. When I watched it, it didn't seem to have any visible means of propulsion, not when I was looking at it anyway. It didn't seem it, but it seemed to be moving steadily. It wasn't floating to me. Didn't seem to be blown by the wind. It seemed to move as one object, not some sort of cluster of things. I think the balloon explanations, I found them pretty thin just looking at it. I mean, I don't know, but it struck me. And I saw a few people, it turned out that some of the debunkers had actually created balloons. Technically, I'm forgetting what the tech was, to say, oh, this is what it could look like. You think, oh, that's interesting. They'd actually created some of those images to look like it. Well, I'd say that's cheating, to be honest with you. I mean, it's what you can't do that and then say, oh, well, it's balloons, can you? But anyway, I didn't think it looked like balloons, but I'm not an expert, I suppose. The other interesting thing was the similar video of other objects that have been found and shown around Twitter and other footage, and you can see quite a few similar ones. And again, you don't know whether they're true or not, these things, but there is some sort of consistency along quite a number of films, I thought. So I thought that was quite interesting. Interestingly, some of the stories, pilots seeing people on jetpacks flying past planes and all that. There's some speculation it might be one of these things. So there's also, Corbell mentioned a story that he says he's on film, but obviously they can't get it, of an incursion on a US nuclear sort of warhead assembly site in, I think it's Nevada, or around that area in America anyway. So I thought that was quite interesting. So I think they've got a bit of form, these things. I found it quite convincing just because of the way it moved and the fact it couldn't be seen. I do get that it was filmed on an iPhone, though. Somebody was filming a screen. So potentially you could do anything with that picture, couldn't you, and tamper with it? I do accept that. And I know there's maybe a few things which Ash will probably has a view on more seriously about the things it might be. I personally think there's a good chance it's real, and it's either some kind of surveillance device that isn't a known civilization surveillance device. I also thought it might be an exosuit, somebody flying in it and all the rest of it. I don't know. But yeah, so I found it pretty convincing, but it's the same old story without any proper provenance or anything else. we're just really left speculating, aren't we? Even in just, pays your money and takes your choice, I suppose. So that was my view on it. I was quite positive, but I wouldn't go to the mattresses on it anyway, put it that way.
Yeah, it's definitely a weird one. I was just watching some of the footage again while you were talking about it there. Very unusual thing, isn't it? And certainly not, a typical shape. At least not as far as I'm aware.
Yeah.
But that's actually a perfect opportunity to ask somebody who knows quite a lot about sighting reports and things like that. Ash, have you ever had anything close to this as ever sent in as a sighting from the UK?
From the shape of it, no. To be fair, I actually had one from Ellesmere Port where they described it as a jellyfish type sighting. They drew a sketch, sent the sketch to me. That was kind of like a jellyfish, not too similar to this one, but kind of a jellyfish shape. That ended up being nothing. Ended up being able to debunk or prove what that was. So it wasn't anything unusual. So that's the only one I can think of. Well, yeah, like you say, the shape of this one, very, very weird. Not what you usually expect these types of videos. It's something completely kind of different to any usual shape that we see. But I am going to basically be the opposite of Dave in my thoughts. And I hate being like this sometimes. I love to be like, yes, this is the one. But yeah, very few times, unfortunately. I mean, like Dave said with the Providence and like all the juicy stuff, like you got people bursting into the office, signing NDAs, the season, like confiscating certain parts of the video, stuff like that, all very fantastical. And like I say, the key points where it's gone into the water and shooting off at speed, that's the parts that we need to see rather than what it looks like from what we see, which to me, I hate to say, balloon because you think it's being trapped by these systems. It should know a balloon, stuff like that. So you just feel a bit stupid saying, I think it's a balloon. But then with these systems and the data, we haven't seen that data. So we're still taking people's word that this is what it tracked. This is saying it wasn't this, it wasn't that. Only seen in thermal, stuff like this. I do believe that people were sent out to look and they couldn't see it, which could be true. But if it's high up, if there's cloud cover I'm not sure about, that could hide it in a way, potentially. Especially if it's like quite a smaller balloon. We don't really see any of the fire observables in the video, only in the kind of the testimony. And it's nothing really, for me, comparing it with all the other videos that Corbell and Knapp and that put out, there's nothing in it, apart from the testimony, there's nothing in it that makes it stand out any more than kind of all the other ones. I did see a comparison to an Eid balloon, but you've probably seen this comparison. Obviously, it is Iraq, it's the Muslim area. I'm not sure if it was Eid at the time. That's probably obviously something we could find out. But I think the comparison was very, very similar to an Eid balloon when you match kind of the bits at the bottom all coming off. And for me, it's kind of too similar. So I've always gone towards that kind of more likely to be this rather than anything else, unless we get that extra footage, any extra data to go with the video. Because otherwise, yeah, it's just hearsay. And when people say like with this stuff where I get a lot of reports where I've got a video or something, and then it's always after I start recording, it's shut off or changed direction. So I'm like, did it? Or are you just trying to build it up a little bit and there's something it isn't? You've always got to take that into consideration where if the more exciting part happens after the video's turned off, you've got to give that bit of doubt to it. So that's kind of my thoughts that have been playing in my mind about it.
Yeah, no, I do hear what you're saying. I'm sort of on the fence with it, really. I think it's, like you say, I personally find it one of the more intriguing videos that Corbell and Knapp have brought forward. And I personally, looking at it, I struggle to... I've seen the Eid balloon cluster type thing that you've mentioned, and it has the kind of stuff hanging down off the bottom and things like that. It does bear a resemblance, that's for sure. But looking at the object in the clip, I don't know, maybe it's just I would have to see an Eid balloon going along at a similar wind speed or whatever. But to me, it just seems to be quite stiff as it moves. And I sort of think if you've got all kinds of dangling little balloon bits, maybe you'd see a bit more movement. But on the other hand, though, the really compelling thing that would make you go, "Oh, it's definitely not balloons," is if you saw it going into the water, or if you saw it shooting off at an unbelievable rate of speed. A balloon popping is not really going to shoot off at us really, really fast, is it? So those are the things that would definitely go, right, there we go. We've got observables on film. That we've got the answer to this is definitely something. But unfortunately, not having that makes it a lot trickier, doesn't it?
So the only bit we've got on film to me is it's floating. To me it gives you payments that it's floating.
Do you think it's floating, Ash? It don't look like it's floating. It looks like it's moving under some propulsion to me. That doesn't look like floating to me. It looks like it's propelled by something. I mean, I know it's hard to. I'm not saying my view's right and you're wrong, but it looks like it's impelled by something. More than floating along and jingle like a balloon normally does.
I think with the system it's used to record it as well. I think it can appear differently in them sensors rather than like a normal video camera filming a balloon. Like when you think of the what's them balloons from Aquadilla video, where it shows them seems to be moving at speed, moving fast. And they were 2 wedding balloons. But
I don't think that's proven. That's absolutely not proven. There's been loads of studies on that. You can't say that they're definitely them. I mean, you might posit it, but saying it like it is, they're not. There's a lot of evidence on that. SCU did a big study on it. So I don't. It's the one where wherever it is, off Costa Rica, where the Coast Guard.
That seems going up. Seems to go in the water as well in that one.
Yeah, it did. Out, split into 2, and all the rest of it. But there's. I mean, you might think it is. I'm not disputing you've been your rights to think that, but you can't say it's definitely not been. There's no definitive proof come out about that, and there's a lot of evidence on the other side. So, I mean, anyway.
I mean, I suppose that the point I'm making there is they behave differently in these sensors when you're watching it. You can't sort of view it as standard video kind of footage. It's different to what you record on your phone when you're viewing it through these sensors in terms of the movement and the speed and stuff, and all to do with the system that's recording it. I guess is that roundabout way of.
I've not heard that. Well, anyway, I mean, I don't know about that in terms of how much different it is the movement. I must admit, I haven't heard that as a thing that's come up. Having watched a few of these, it's a significantly different movement. I could see that. I could certainly see how it might be, but it's not something having watched a few of these that has been brought up massively. But the movement's a lot different. Now, if it's time lapse, I could see that. I can also understand if it's sort of thermal or it's infrared. I get the flare thing is a little bit weirder, but anyway, I mean, we don't know, do we? I suppose it's just interesting. I suppose the discussion shows how it's, it's very interesting, isn't it?
I think, like I was saying, the only way to know for absolute certain would be to see it doing something that absolutely, definitely could not be balloons or any other prosaic explanation. In the absence of that being on film, we're going off, what people have said they saw, and there's so many variables along that path, isn't there? And that, in defence of Corbell and Knapp, in terms of bringing these cases forward, I find them interesting. I think we all do, and it's better to have cases and have that experience of investigating them and things like that.
Definitely.
And one thing that they've said as well is that part of the reason for putting this case out is to hopefully inspire people who saw other bits of the footage and things like that to actually come forward. Obviously, there was I forget the name of the guy who they got on. Can anyone remember his name? I'm sure we all know who I'm talking about. Anyway, the guy who
I can't know. No.
Yeah, he was interviewed by New York Post with Stephen Greenstreet, and then he came out again on Weaponized and sort of said that he felt like he'd been made to look more skeptical than he actually was. But it's funny, it's like a tug of war, because Stephen Greenstreet obviously wanted to make it all sound like it was total nonsense, but then on the other hand, Jeremy Corbell clearly was kind of nudging him towards trying to get him to say that it was more anomalous. So it's without that, more witnesses, and we're seeing the actual observables in the video. we're in that. It's very, very interesting, and we've all had a good, an enjoyable time trying to get to the bottom of it. But I'm hoping that we may see some more. But in fairness, I have to say, I've said that about quite a lot of these videos, and we generally don't see a great deal of other people coming out with further information. Maybe this will be the one that proves that wrong. I hope so, because it for me is definitely one of the more interesting. I hadn't really thought about an order of them, but I think this is probably, for me, I think this is probably number 2 out of all of the weaponized cases that have come forward. And number 1, I would say personally, is the Mosul orb. I know Ash probably won't agree with me on that one, but I found that interesting because of the metallic sphere thing and the fact that had been mentioned so much by Sean Kirkpatrick, and the fact that these things are supposedly been seen across the planet. And Sean Kirkpatrick, obviously, as we know, is extremely, skeptical is probably not even the right word, but he's certainly not convinced in his public statements that there's really anything to be seen. But yeah, even he was quite forthcoming with talking about how these metallic orbs have been seen all over the world. So I find that Mosul orb quite interesting for those reasons. And it's just a shame we didn't see any more developments on that case. And for me, this is number 2. And obviously the Christmas lights and the Mojave Triangle are further down that list, my personal opinion. But what do you reckon, Dave? Where does it sit in the rankings of weaponized cases?
No, I think it's pretty good, but I do take what Ash is saying on board, in particular statements. The thing about it, though, it's interesting. I mean, a lot of people don't like Corbell because he is quite showy. But on the other side of it, he has held on to these for 3 years, him and Knapp. He's got Knapp there. And I think one of the things is about, do the people fit the typical profile of grifters and doing it all for clicks and getting it out quickly? I don't think they do, even though I know he presents a bit like that in his showmanship. In terms of behaviour, I don't think he does so much, and he's trying to do the right thing. So I don't get the impression that they try to massively sensationalise it when they present the evidence. But equally, it's not always, there's always seems to be something missing, I suppose. But so I think just generally, and we've had this discussion many times, it very much depends on who's bringing it forward. And I think for me, that's quite an interest about what's going on with it. That witness, by the way, he was a second-hand witness, one to add to the pot. He'd been told, he wasn't in the room, when they were spotting it, he'd been told by people on the base. And it was him, I think, who majored on the fact that they'd come in and done all the rest of it. Yeah, so that was where that come from, mainly. The NDA, they have NDAs and all the rest of it. So it just shows you how difficult, as you were saying, actually, it is to untangle all these matters. But equally, I don't think Corbell and particularly Napa are like doing grifting stuff or anything like that, even like some other people who I would immediately suspect they were sensationalising it, when I see them. So, yeah, so I'd say for me it's pretty strong, but again, no cigar, as it were. But I do take on board what Ash is saying, absolutely. So I think we need that perspective as well, and he's the person who's in the field.
Any thoughts, Dave, on where it's sitting in the rankings of cases brought forward? I'm guessing probably similar kind of thing to myself. It's up there at the.
Ash, you mean? I thought. No, I said. I agree. I'd say second. Yeah, to Mosul. Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe first. Maybe I don't know. I'd say just second. Yeah, I think it's pretty strong.
Yeah. For me, one of the more interesting ones for sure. But again, I would love to see that more information with it. And I'm like I say, maybe it will be, because I think it probably has made a bit more of a splash than some of the other cases. So perhaps, I don't think there's a clear, like I say, some of those other ones, I think there ended up being a pretty clear skeptical explanation, prosaic explanation. This one, I don't think we've quite there yet. So I'd love to get some more info. But what do you reckon, Ash? Where do you think it sits on the rankings?
Well, based on my track record of these videos, probably the top one.
Right.
In terms of probably the most unusual with the shape, so it is kind of stand out for me on that. And it is. I mean, you mentioned that he is getting this stuff out there, and that is the main thing. But no matter if I'm always going to be like, nah, to every one of them. The fact that we look at these videos, it's new videos, and if the thing you do say this was classified on the identifier, stuff like that, and we're getting to see it, I mean, that's like, even like 4 or 5 years ago, we've had nothing. We had nothing at all, like new. So just to have these new stuff to talk about, I think that's the most important thing. It's just a shame that there's so many people can't disagree without fighting over it on Twitter and stuff. It's just
Well, and that's
agree.
what we've always tried to do on here, isn't it? You know, on the round tables, we always have our differences of opinion, but we don't. You know, so far at least, touch wood, we haven't devolved into slanging.
What do you mean?
wait till I see you tomorrow, Dave.
Yeah, that's right. He'll come round and get you. I should get me an headlock in the bar tomorrow. No, but yeah, you're right. It's just a bit pathetic, isn't it, when they start going on like that? It really is. You know.
Yeah. Well, anyway, enough said on that. We'll see if any more information does end up coming out on it. But very interesting one. I definitely enjoyed looking into that one, even though we didn't get exactly a really clear explanation for it either way. So I think we'll move on then to a briefing that was received by members of Congress, which I believe was the 12th of January. So again, seems like quite a while ago at this stage. But it was basically a meeting that has been quite a long time in the works, and many people have been anticipating it and what was going to be said. And it was a classified briefing on UFOs by the Inspector General. And one of the reasons I think that this was anticipated was that there's been much discussion about the fact that the ICIG, the Intelligence Community Inspector General, had deemed Grush, the whistleblower that we've talked about a lot, his case was deemed to be credible and urgent, which has obviously given a certain amount of credibility to the claims made by Grush. Even beyond his own personal credibility as an individual, which was already quite clear from his track record and his manner in general and whatnot. But the fact that the Intelligence Community Inspector General had deemed it credible and urgent definitely added some weight to that. And many of the key politicians who've been pushing for increased transparency were in attendance at this particular briefing, and the various reactions were filmed as they left the briefing and whatnot. Apparently there was 16 representatives who attended, and the familiar names that we talk about quite a lot who've been involved in UAP work behind the scenes, most of them I think were there. Tim Burchett was there, Anna Paulina, Jared Moskovich, Eric Burleson, Robert Garcia, and Mike Turner. So a lot of the big names.
Oh, Mike Turner wasn't there, I don't think, Frank. He went to something else, apparently. Believe it or not.
Okay.
I'll tell you about that in a minute. Sorry, I didn't mean to dive in there.
No, always good to I stand corrected in that instance then, but still a lot of the names that we're familiar with being involved behind the scenes in the States there. And I think basically one of the key takeaways from it all was, put simply, that Dave Grush appears to be legit after all, which is kind of what we've been thinking all along, but certainly seemed to be confirmed to those that were in attendance for that briefing. And there weren't really any reports of people leaving the briefing with doubts, about Grush after what had been said, from further information that came forward. In fact, there seemed to be, I think, fair to say, quite significant progress towards getting the answers that are being looked for. Quotes such as this briefing actually moved the needle certainly seems to suggest that whilst there wasn't any minds blown, there was some substance there and some progress towards actually getting some answers. And a common theme amongst those who were interviewed afterwards was that they actually have some pretty good leads to follow up on. And probably by this stage, having been a few weeks later, they're probably well along the path of following up on those leads. And a lot of the basics that has been brought forward by Grush were essentially established and confirmed as being credible, which definitely gives the green light to kind of, dig deeper and follow up on those leads. So a phrase that I say quite a lot on the podcast, it'll be interesting to see what happens next. I should get that tattooed on my arm or something. So go on then, Dave. What are your thoughts on all of that?
I'm sorry I dived in. I'm sorry I dived in there, Frank. That was very bad of me. But the reason I was diving in was I listened to an interview with Matt Laszlo, and he described that skiff section. It's a whole section. We've got about 6 different rooms, and it's sort of secure. And apparently he talked to another senator, said, he wasn't in there. No, he'd gone to another meeting, Turner. And it's the reason it's significant is I don't think he wanted to be present for that briefing, Because if you remember, he scuppered the UAP Act and he didn't want to be seen to hear whatever they had to say, if you see it, so he could have plausible deniability, or he couldn't, because other people would have witnessed him hearing it. So that's how I know how he wasn't there. Matt Laszlo is a brilliant bit of journalism, because you wouldn't know that, would you, unless somebody had told him the layout and they've got 6 different rooms and he didn't go in. And that was, and everybody thought he had, but he hadn't. That's, if you read most of the reports, they say he did go in.
Fair enough.
So
that's really good to know. I think he was scheduled on the invite list, wasn't he? So that's probably where I'd heard that. But yeah, it's good to know. Cheers.
The key thing though, he was ducking it though, so he couldn't be said to know. Do you see what I mean? That's important. Anyway, I think that's important. I mean, I think it partly was better than the DOD IG briefing. They just confirmed that they were indeed in Washington, and that was it, wasn't it? The other one, the DOD IG event, they didn't say anything, so they were really annoyed about that. This one, as you said, had more substance, and they did all say, the Congress people. I mean, that Garcia looked white when he come out. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. He was seemed quite shaken for me when he was talking. A few of them said that he had moved the needle. He'd received new info, was what Garcia said. Eric Burleson's not stopped going on about it since he come out, and they've all said they want new hearings. There's something to follow up on. There's things to look into. And the key thing for me is not one of them said, yeah, that Grush, no, he's making it up. His allegations, he's taking us for a ride. There was none of that. I think there was some frustration in that the ICIG, the Intelligence Community Inspector General, wanted to keep it on process, and they were getting frustrated with that. Kept wanting to talk about process, and he was a bit more cagey about what they'd investigated. And it turned out, while they'd investigated with witnesses, they hadn't sent anybody out to these places to investigate eyes on the ground, which I think they were getting, reading between the lines, they were getting questioned on. And there was a bit of a frustration there. But the key thing to come out of it is they were fired up and they were talking about having hearings. So I think it was a very different beast, as I say, the DOD Inspector General, where he said nothing. And I think this moved it forward. And I think it's another thing for Grush to show he's very credible, and not just in some areas. They didn't come out and say, oh, well, he was harassed, but as for the rest of it, he's making it up and he's no evidence. That wasn't the case at all. So I thought it was really, really significant. And a lot of those people come out and moved the needle, claims of merit, and loads of different statements like that. It was very strong. So, yeah, I was thought it was more better than I thought, actually, Frank, I must say.
And what about yourself, Ash? Have you seen much about that since it happened?
Not too much since. I mean, not much to add to what Dave said, really. But I think it's a great start to the year to kick off straight away with that. It's good vindication for Grush, like you said. It'd be interesting to see if anything comes out of them investigating the reprisals, like the kind of the threats and stuff like that. Which don't know if we'll ever see anything publicly about that, but it's always interesting. Just to talk about hearings, I mean, it's been definitely a breakout year last year for the hearings and how serious they seem to be taking it now. So it's just carried that on, but maybe even stronger than it has done the past 12 months. So just to see that continuing, I think it's going to be exciting. Like I say, got all these congressmen excited about it and wanting to talk about it. So I guess that's the key thing that we'll see moving forward. So just looking forward to what comes next.
Yeah, seeing how it goes. And I always think it must be quite tricky, to be one of the people in attendance at a briefing like that, to then walk straight out after having heard all this stuff that you can't talk about, and then be right in front of loads of reporters with microphones and cameras. It must be quite tough, and I think, when sometimes people are, really don't want to say anything, it's probably just because they just don't want to risk accidentally just giving something away, and they sort of err on the side of caution. I think it's, I'd probably be like that, to be honest with you. Like, your whole career could potentially be in jeopardy if you accidentally reveal classified information to reporters and not having time to digest it as well. Not to sort of like, give them an easy ride or anything like that. You know what I mean? At the same time, but it's a balance that to walk, isn't it? Go on, Dave.
You're right, Frank. I thought they did a really good job, to be honest with you, when they come out. I thought, because it must be difficult, like you say, knowing what you can say. And I mean, only Lou Elizondo's a real master of it, and maybe Grush. And most of them are Eric Davis, I suppose, or he's like a kamikaze pilot. But I mean, I think it was really good what they did. And Eric Burleson, remember, on the DOD one, he mentioned propulsion just speculating from his own speculation. They were accusing him of saying, revealing classified information until he clarified, and he wasn't even mentioning the DOD briefing. So you're right, it's a real tight-wop. I thought they did really well. I was really impressed by the amount they were able to say, given they couldn't really say anything, So, yeah, I totally agree with you. I thought it was pretty good performance when they come out. And we see this, as Ash was alluding to, the Congress sort of growing as a force. And I think we can start to see the Congress versus the establishment, as it were, or the core group, or whatever you want to call it, which we might see in some of the other things that go forward, starting to appear. And it's whether they've got enough clout and muscle to sort of win the arm wrestle, as it were. I think this was what I thought. It just made me think of it when Ash was talking then.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one to see if we do get any more hearings. As you say, Ash, it was kind of a real breakout year, as you put it, wasn't it, for hearings in 2023. I don't think anybody expected that amount of hearings and the length of them and the sorts of information that came out. So certainly one to watch for over the coming months. Let's move on then. So a very big thing that happened, slightly more recently, just as it happens, we've ended up doing this kind of in chronological order of how things have happened. But this is Sean Kirkpatrick, the departing director of AARO, released a scathing, is probably a good word to use, a scathing opinion piece, which was actually around about January the 19th, so it's kind of getting along later on in the month. And it was entitled, Here's What I Learned as the US Government's UFO Hunter. So basically, the first thing I noticed about that piece was I was immediately hit by that headline. Because I've got a podcast, about UFOs, obviously, and I've really tried quite hard not to ever refer to myself as, a UFO buff or certainly UFO hunter. It kind of seems a bit off, really, as a title. A guy like that who's repeatedly stressed the importance of dealing with the topic seriously, scientifically, and whatnot, then come out and call yourself a UFO hunter. It sort of sounds a bit like the way the Daily Star tabloid would describe somebody, rather than the way that, a scientist whose job it's been to investigate this topic on behalf of the public would describe himself as the first kind of article after he steps down. Just a bit odd. And I think the article, for me, it's just my opinion in the day, it goes on to sort of use a tone that seemed to seek to actually minimize the topic in general and kind of ridicule even. There was quite a lot of mentions of the term conspiracy, conspiracist, and a lot of dismissals of anybody who brought forward any testimony or information, which seems like basically anything other than what Kirkpatrick wanted to hear was dismissed as conspiracies and that kind of thing. And there's a couple of quotes here to sort of demonstrate that. Quote, after painstakingly assembling a team of highly talented and motivated personnel and working with them to develop a rational, systematic and science-based strategy to investigate these phenomena, our efforts were ultimately overwhelmed by sensational but unsupported claims that ignored contradictory evidence, yet captured the attention of policymakers and the public, driving legislative battles and dominating the public narrative. The result of this whirlwind of tall tales, fabrication, and second-hand or third-hand retellings of the same was a social media frenzy and a significant amount of congressional and executive time and energy spent on investigating these so-called claims as if we didn't have anything better to do, unquote. Now, the fact is, we know for sure that many of these whistleblowers provided detailed testimony to AARO, and basically there's been a lot of telling of how these whistleblowers were treated by AARO, and a lot of them simply skipped AARO altogether and that kind of thing, and just went straight to Congress or the Intelligence Community Inspector General and so forth. So we've heard. Anyone that did go to AARO were dismissed as conspiracists with no credible evidence, and claims were not followed up on and whatnot. To me, doesn't sound like a commitment really to follow the evidence where it leads. It's just like, Kirkpatrick with his hands over his ears, saying la la la, not wanting to hear any of it. And I sort of tweeted about this at the time, and I think it kind of sums up my thoughts in a nutshell on it. My tweet said, during Kirkpatrick's time with AARO, we had almost complete radio silence, a total lack of willingness to pursue important leads provided by many credible witnesses, and now ending with this sneering summary, parroting debunker talking points, and a total failure to address the key issues. A disgrace, which, you know, that's kind of quite strongly worded, but, you know, that's definitely my thoughts on the whole thing. And I think it's fair to say that those kind of sentiments were also echoed, certainly not as a result of my post or anything like that, but I think Christopher Mellon was thinking along the same lines. Is probably a better way to put it. Obviously, the former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defence for Intelligence, somebody who's, you know, himself has been quite deep behind that curtain of secrecy, and knows how all of that kind of world works. And Christopher Mellon's quote, before I hand over to you guys for some thoughts, was, quote, "I was astonished by one of the central claims made by Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick in his recent article in Scientific American blasting UAP conspiracists, specifically his claim that as of the time of my departure, none, let me repeat, none of the conspiracy-minded whistleblowers in the public eye had elected to come to AARO to provide their quote-unquote evidence and statement for the record, despite numerous invitations. I'm baffled because, in an effort to assist his investigation, I introduced Dr. Kirkpatrick to the former director of the ATIP program, Lou Elizondo, as well as Dr. Eric Davis and Dr. Hal Puthoff. Each of these prominent voices associated with the ATIP program spent hours briefing Dr. Kirkpatrick in a classified setting. None have received any feedback. Hopefully, the pending report to Congress on the alleged UAP recovery program will describe the specific claims made by these and dozens of other witnesses and what AARO did to evaluate them." Unquote. So a lengthy tweet there from Christopher Mellon, but, you know, such is the way of X, what used to be Twitter these days. Lengthy tweets are now a thing. But in this case, I thought that was very, very well put, as is often the case with Mellon. And it just seems to, what Kirkpatrick is saying just doesn't seem right. He's literally saying in an article that nobody's come forward and provided any statement for the record. But everybody else is saying, yeah, but hang on, I went to you. I introduced all these people. You know, it just seems absolutely baffling to me. And, you know, since then, there's kind of various pictures have surfaced of Sean Kirkpatrick attending events with Susan Gough, who's obviously the DOD spokesperson, and obviously famous for, you know, sort of attempting to control the narrative and whatnot. And of course, there's various kind of thoughts about why that might be. But yeah, a bit of a baffling debacle, really. So what do you reckon about all of that, Dave?
Well, I was struggling then to contain myself listening to that farrago. I mean, I thought we'd earned the last of him, but he'd just gone to the DOE to take his cushy job as a reward for giving everybody the runaround for 2 years while he was in AARO. I mean, what does he say? We wasted our time. Well, what did he do? He didn't do anything, did he? What? He stopped him from making paper planes in his office. What a load of gaslighting. He did nothing, dragged his feet, and all the rest of it. We all know all that. Anyway, I won't go into that. I'd like to focus on the strange behaviour of Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick. Yeah? Why did he bother doing that? He's not said anything before, God bless him. So why would he start now? I mean, he did the op-ed, as you said. He also did an interview with that CNN guy, Peter Bergen. And it was just seemed like crazy. He did that crazy Stephen Greenstreet narrative. You know, that one where everybody's been fooled, the senators, by a load of dodgy scientists. And it was absolutely Looney Tunes, this cherry-picked narrative. Absolutely crazy. And he virtually repeated it word for word. He attacked whistleblowers, the people he was trying to encourage. Gullible Congress people. I mean, you don't get very far, do you, attacking all the politicians in America. And a load of, crazy scientists. I mean, no evidence for ET, again using those words, did not touch Grush's allegations. Laughably, he said in one of the interviews, he followed the honour system to investigate, which basically meant he rang up. So have you got any secret projects today? Oh, no, we haven't. All right, then, fair enough. And that was his investigation. I mean, what's that all about? And he admitted to that. Christ, I wouldn't admit to all that if I was him. Absolutely laughable. Anyway, So why did he do that? Why did he make a fool of himself? He got out of there, he annoyed everybody. People come out and called him liars. All the big hitters said, we did like you just said, Frank. And he virtually destroyed his own credibility in this mad. And surely even he's not so big a child as to sort of do that. So why did he do it? Now, some think it's related to the DOD report, but come DOD IG report basically come out. I won't go into it. We might go into it in a bit, Frank, but it basically said that the military had not done anything, not coordinated anything in 4 years. They need to book their ideas up, and AARO had played a part in that. So these people think that annoyed him. But I don't think it is. I think what's behind this is I think they've got a whiff of what's coming up in this Grush op-ed that he's writing. And I think it's making some serious allegations that they can't get out of. And they're all trying to get the retaliation in first. Why would he do this? I think he's been ordered to do this, to sort of really kick up some and try and get it to the point where people are sick of it and won't take anything serious at Grush. He said to poison the well effectively beforehand. So he's getting his retaliation in first. There's also been a spate of these useless mainstream media pieces that will come out saying nothing, ill-informed. Forget what the latest one was in New Yorker. What a load of cobblers that was. The bloke hadn't even looked at the UAP Act. He didn't think it was important. So they're obviously being dictated to by a load of flunkies in the DOD or the core group to all these journalists. So it feels like it's orchestrated to me is the point I'm getting. Now, this guy's still an unpaid consultant to the DOD. He still said he is. How can that be? Insulted politicians, he's insulted the politicians, insulted the whistleblowers. I mean, how can they should be coming out and saying this is wrong? We don't agree with this, but there's been no criticism of his remarks. How can that be as well? And the killer for me, which you may have seen me write just a couple of tweets on, Frank, if you've been looking, is he's still writing volume 1 of the UAP history. How can he be allowed to write that? He's showed himself to be totally prejudiced. He's not objective. He doesn't respect anybody who's involved in the process, yet he's writing the UAP history. The man who rings up the secret keeper says, "Oh, you weren't doing anything wrong." He said, "No, we weren't there, Sean." He says, "Right, that's fair enough." And then he goes away and writes nothing to see here. I mean, you can't have him writing that. So I just can't see how that's happening, because that could mislead Congress. A lot of those DOD people are implicated in this from Chris Sharp's article, so they'll be guilty of misleading Congress because they'd be careful just to focus on AARO saying they don't know anything. I mean, and also the other killer is, I seem to remember from one of your shows and reading it myself, the Comptroller General is responsible for this history, not Sean Kirkpatrick. Sean Kirkpatrick is writing it on the Comptroller General's behalf, and he runs the ICIG. So presumably he's going to sign it off to say he's happy with it. So I think, I've gone off on one there a little bit, really, Dave, you say, but I think there's something, he's trying to rubbish this report, but I also think it's really serious that he's writing this volume 1 of the UFO history, because the mainstream media will pick it up and say, "Oh, nothing to see here." And I think that he's just proven himself to be an unfit person. So it's fair to say I wasn't too impressed, Frank.
Yeah, really good point about the historical report as well. And as you say, I'm going back a couple of years now into the legislation. I think we talked about it, David. Originally, proposed legislation was that the Comptroller General was actually going to write the report, and it was them that were going to actually be responsible. But then it got watered down to the AARO would do it, and Comptroller General just oversees that process or signs it off or whatever, which is, it is an interesting one. Would they have? Well, we'll see what it says when it comes out. But I think based on what Kirkpatrick has been saying here, we've got a fair idea that there's not going to be any. It's probably not going to be worth a carrot, as it were. But interestingly as well, what I found interesting about this is that this is basically just Sean Kirkpatrick expressing his opinion as an individual. It's an opinion piece, not an official statement of the DOD or any government body and their official statement to the public about what their findings were or anything like that. It's Sean Kirkpatrick is now a private citizen, and so has been said specifically by Susan Gough, the views expressed are his own, and that's it's interesting because he's clearly written this from the point of view of you know, he's basically just saying it's my opinion as a private citizen. But especially with that title, you've got to know that it's going to get picked up by the mainstream media, and you're going to know that the impact that it will have, it will sort of present the whole thing as, oh, nothing to see here. You know, I was the UFO hunter for the government, and I'm telling you, there's nothing. So don't worry about it. Just go about your business. And it's another very interesting thing about it is that I was trying to find out about this. I think I mentioned it on the pod a little while back, whether or not Kirkpatrick actually submitted this document for the DOPSA process, the security review process, in the same way that Dave Grush had to do, and Lou Elizondo's doing with his book, and Lukatsky and whatnot had done in the past. And that's quite interesting if he did or he didn't. It kind of opens up questions, but it's now actually been confirmed 100% that Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick did submit this draft document for a security review prior to publication. Obviously, that's not an endorsement of any of the contents within what he's saying. It's still just his own personal opinion. But given how long these types of things take to get cleared, you know, when did he submit that for review? I don't think there's any way that we could find that out specifically. But if it had been submitted a few months before he actually left, how has he already come to that opinion with months of work left to go? And if he's had it rushed through and he's had it approved within a week, you know, after he figured out he was going to leave, how has that happened then? Why does it take so much longer for Grush to get things approved? It can go on for months and months, but Kirkpatrick's been fast tracked. So there's some definite weirdness there about that process. You know, he's either been given, like, you know, favorable treatment and he's had it rushed through right at the end after he's already decided he's going to leave, or even more worryingly, if he submitted this document for review a couple of months or even a month or so before he's actually even finished, how has he been so confident in these conclusions when he's still got time left to do the job? What happens if something else? Do you know what I mean? It's like he'd already planned he was going to leave, and he's written the article. And yeah, so anyway, a few things I just wanted to follow up on because I'd mentioned that a little bit. But now over to you, Ash. What do you reckon, mate? Have you been checking up on this side of things?
Yeah, so I mean, Dave's got such a way of words. It's quite hard to follow on. But reading this article kind of in isolation, you kind of forget about everything you sort of know about Kirkpatrick or the history of it. Obviously, it's very defensive article. Seems like a lot of frustrations are coming out in the article. It says it was weird for him to do it in the first place. It's like, why is he attacking these people? Like Dave said, he's left. That part of his job is done. That part of his life, his career is finished. So why can't it bring it all up in this way when, like, it sounds like very pissed off with the words he's using? It kind of seems like when you talk about the evidence and all this stuff and extraordinary claims, kind of extraordinary evidence, all that crap, it's like he wants people to basically, you're the UFO guy. I've got this UFO that I've found. Here it is. And he'd be like, yeah, cool, thanks. That's like it's like that's what he wanted, rather than this has happened to me. Investigate it. Like, surely that job was for him to investigate it, not to be handed everything on a plate, which is what he's kind of saying. Where, like, if you're saying this, give me the evidence. Well, that's your job to collect evidence. And we know he's done nothing. We just seem like there's a couple of years of frustration is just coming out of it. And like the term, you talk about the UFO hunter term, it sounds like he's written that title himself. It's like you say, it's kind of a jab at everybody. Kind of, obviously, he's going to be aware of what's said on social media and stuff. He has to, and from other kind of people, his peers as well. But to call yourself a UFO hunter, so I mean, it's not even UAP hunter. He's called it UFO hunter. Again, going back to the old style, kind of making the joke of it. I mean, I've been called UFO hunter, UFO expert, ET hunter, and stuff in media articles. That's just the newspaper putting it in. It's not me saying, call me this. But from the title of it, it sounds like he's given himself that name, which is just even more bizarre. And just seems like it's just a jab at people, like the whole article is. I mean, some of the stuff, I'm not going to say I was warming to him or anything, but I can kind of see some similarities with what I do, UFO Identified, in terms of fighting the sensationalism, fighting the media, because stuff that we do, the stuff that many other people do, which is the real hard work, just gets ignored on the whole. Where some shitty video or fake story starts going viral, gets all the attention, and it can be a hard battle fighting that constantly. So, I mean, maybe he started off with good intentions and then he's just been squashed down. Maybe there's roadblocks that we've not been aware of that's just made him think, fuck this type situation. But I mean, all his frustrations, though, I mean, he has made himself. I'm not defending him in any way. He's just been so dismissive from the start. His demeanour in the hearings, but I can just to say I can see some sympathy. Maybe not sympathy, but can see some of the similarities with what I do with some of his comments.
I think
kind
to
of
be
links in
honest,
mine.
though, Ash, your point about people maybe being sensationalists and grifting, it's different to what he's doing. He's saying people are coming forward with proper testimony, and Grush, who's got the ICIG on his back with 40 witnesses, he's characterising that as sensationalist. I mean, you're right on your point, but he's trying to cast reasonable evidence, but he couldn't be bothered to investigate as some sort of sensationalist crap. That's the difference. So I get what you're saying, and I think you're right in terms of those trends, but he's just trying to say it's all rubbish. And it just won't fly. And he's had no intention. I don't think he got pissed off. He revealed himself there. He had no intention from the off to do it, and he got away with it. So why did he come back to make a mess out of the bloke? He'd done almost a perfect crime, and he come back and hit the bloke over the head with what he robbed in the end doing this. Anyway, sorry, I did. But I only wanted to make the point. But I get what you're saying, and that's a good point about how these people sort of go for sensations. But he's tried to say legitimate evidence is sensationalist, and he's not right. He's a total gaslight, king of gaslighting.
No, totally. Like I say, it's from his own making.
Yeah.
He's kind of put himself under the bus and then complain about the driver type situation. That's what he's done.
Good one.
Like I say, people have said, "Yeah, we come to you before," and he's just totally ignored it. So, I mean, I can see some aspects to it, but on the whole, yeah, I just don't understand why he's done it and why he's attacked them people with no real basis to do it.
Yeah, I think like you say, like both of you said there, it is a really good point that there's an aspect of the UFO community that doesn't want to hear the bad news. I think, like in terms of if you're looking at a UFO case, and as we know, the vast majority of people in the public who see something that they think is a UFO UAP, it's probably a misidentification or something that it has a prosaic explanation. And of course, it's a lot more exciting to think of something as being truly anomalous, and that's what we all are interested in this for in the first place. And people don't like being told that is the case. However, I think like everybody was saying there, is that that's not necessarily even what it is. I don't think he's been inundated with abuse about cases that he's come out and debunked, because he's not come out and debunked any cases, really. He's not done anything. That's exactly the problem, isn't it? It's like if he'd have come out with detailed analysis of cases and gone, well, listen, there's this case in the public eye, we've got further information on it, and it's definitely not anything anomalous, because look, here's all the data that we've got on it, within reason, obviously, as to what can be released publicly and things like that. But no, like there was a complete just a refusal to engage with things like the Nimitz case, which is the case that they should have been going straight after. As soon as he got the keys to the cabinet, should have been looking through to find the Nimitz files and any old sensor data they could get their hands on, and asking the witnesses to that case to come in and trying to piece it together like a proper bit of detective work, which is what he said he was going to do. But he didn't, did he? And it's like that quote that I pulled out earlier, he's talking about painstakingly assembling a team of highly talented and all this kind of thing. And then he says, our efforts were ultimately overwhelmed by, and he calls them sensational but unsupported claims. But if your approach is overwhelmed by people coming forward and telling you stuff, then that tends to sort of like sound as though there's a lot of people coming to you and saying, look, I saw this, I used to do this job in the government and I saw this and heard about this. And rather than following up on them, he's just gone, no, that's not what we're interested in. I've got my head focused on this particular way that I'm going to do it, and we don't want to hear from you. And then to even take it a step further And like as Chris Mellon was saying there, is that to claim that nobody has even bothered to come forward when they have, that's what really baffles me about it. And then, to sort of leave the job and come out with this article calling yourself a UFO, it couldn't be more baffling, And I think a lot of people, we were fairly skeptical about Kirkpatrick from the beginning because of things like Lou Elizondo's reaction to Kirkpatrick being given the job right at the beginning. We were, sort of, questioning it a little bit from that point of view. But having said that, we, deep down, I think wanted some good information and good reports to come out of the AARO office, and yeah, to end like this is just absolutely bizarre. I don't think there's many who are thrilled about what Kirkpatrick did during his time. But onwards and upwards, and we'll see if anything good does come out of AARO. Anyone got anything further to add?
Yeah, only that he made himself the anti-Lou, didn't he? That was his strategy. He wanted to be the opposite of Lou Elizondo. He used the same thing. I am the anti-Lou, and gone around using the same strategy, being I was an insider on it to say it's all rubbish. I mean, anyway, yeah, absolutely using the same strategies, low information zone, this crap from Green Street, and then all the rest of it, saying I knew. It's just appalling. And as I say, how he can write that report, I will never know. That is an absolute disgrace. Anyway, as I say, I think, I should have started. I shouldn't have bothered speaking again on that, Frank. Sorry, mate.
No, it's all good. Anyway, Ash, anything to add? Or shall we crack on? We've got another thing to talk about. So
No, crack on.
So this one's, I guess you could say, slightly more UFO community focused story, because I think it's, it hasn't really been a mainstream news story, this, but it is interesting. And I touched about this, touched on it a bit a little while ago on the pod. I guess it would have been like mid-December or something like that. I just so happened to stumble across a tweet from Rob Heatherly, who'd been doing investigative work looking into basically Wikipedia articles being edited. And I'd noticed, just when I do research for the pod, I often look on Wikipedia just to give you sort of like an overview of something, a particular case or whatever, just to get key dates. And then you can obviously use that as a jumping off point to sort of, go and dig into certain areas, check everything's accurate, because obviously Wikipedia is edited by users and whatnot. And I just noticed that whenever I was looking into a certain person, if they were like a UFO sort of personality, often the articles had a certain, debunky type of tone to them. Not anywhere as bad as like Kirkpatrick's article, but sort of, dipping the toe in the water or that kind of thing. Now, I did wonder why, and then I noticed Rob Heatherly's tweets. As I say, he's been doing the work looking into this for quite some months now. And Rob's kind of digging into the story came out via the Good Trouble show, actually. Shout out Matt Ford. Bear me 1 second. Sorry about that. Couldn't find the mute button. So anyway, shout out Matt Ford, who seems to be doing a lot of good work these days. Good on you, Matt, if you're listening. Now, there's been a few fingers pointed at Mick West specifically around this whole thing. I have to say, I'm not sure that there's absolutely concrete evidence that Mick West is actually the mastermind of this or anything like that. Certainly been some screenshots shared of Mick being supportive of kind of editing of Wikipedia articles to sort of make UFO cases, and other kind of topics that he doesn't agree with to seem less credible. But I don't personally think there's enough to point towards this as being his idea that he's masterminded or anything. But essentially, what the actual thing is that's happened is the takeaway is that this particular group have been making a concerted effort to specifically go through, Wikipedia pages. To do just that, like I mentioned a second ago, make certain topics seem less credible than perhaps they did before they got their hands on the Wikipedia page. And it's kind of a takeaway of this is how much of an important kind of battleground the information wars actually are in this day and age. We've seen it with various polarizing events the last few years, COVID, various kind of political campaigns, military conflicts, each side kind of goes to unprecedented lengths to control the information online. That's why, they call it the information battleground. Who's winning the information war? And I think with this topic, there does seem to be that clearly coordinated effort to make the topic appear less credible. And, that is according to the bias, of course, of the group who've been orchestrating the campaign in the first place. The reason being, Wikipedia is that first place that a lot of people go for an overview of a topic. If you Google something, Wikipedia pops up in the top 5 most of the time. And if you control that, to a certain extent, you control the gates, for whoever gets into the topic any further. Obviously, if you think the whole topic's nonsense, you have a viewpoint that you're stopping people from getting sucked into a nonsense rabbit hole. I mean, I suppose in some ways I was thinking if someone was doing this about flat Earth or chemtrails, I might be a little bit more sympathetic. But, when it gets into the UFO side of things, obviously I'm not so supportive of that kind of an effort. But I think the main thing really is that objectivity is, or should be, paramount. If flat Earth really is nonsense, then why not present all the arguments and information to anyone who wants to read about it and let people make up their own minds? The fact is, it's not a noble crusade to deliberately obscure part of the picture. No matter how nonsense you think that picture is, if it really is as nonsense as you think, then that should become clear to anybody who looks at it. And that's why I think it's so important to have a platform like Wikipedia be objective in the information it provides. So it just feels morally wrong that there's an orchestrated effort like this, to sort of seek to influence people away from facts and present things in a twisted way. If the page was edited by a starseed type of person who claimed to be being contacted by the Anunnaki with a message for humanity as long as you pay for the upcoming book, I'd be equally outraged. I just want the facts, not a twisted version of the facts. So before I descend into a coughing mess, Ash, what do you reckon of all that, mate?
It's weird. Like, if, say, information is important, and one of these ways is the internet and things like Wikipedia, and you got to sort of ask yourself, why would people do this? Like, are they losing the battle on the other sides, not having to take to this kind of extreme? But if I have an interest in something, like for example, flat Earth, like you mentioned, I don't believe in that. I don't get into debate about it. It's not part of my life. I've heard about it. I don't subscribe to it, so I just don't engage with it. Purposely spend what must be a lot of time spending your time to go through articles and just change stuff to change how other people believe or perceive something. Just don't understand what is the point of it. If you're not interested, just don't bother with it. Just don't engage with it. So why it's going to this level? This group of people, I think people say it's in the hundreds, or this group of people that are doing these editing. What's the bigger picture? Is it kind of not Mick West, but that kind of side of people losing the battle with Congress and everything coming out kind of more in support of UFOs, and they have to go this way? Or is it just a group of kind of similar to Anonymous, but kind of anti-UFO anonymous group that just want to do it for the fun of it? Or it's just, I don't look too much, I'm not, not read too much into it, but it's just baffling to the kind of the reasoning behind it. And yeah, it's just, I don't understand why.
About yourself, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty shocked by this. I mean, I've been looking on Wikipedia for a number of years, and you just think it's a load of sort of sanctimonious, sort of mainstream academics going on with themselves on market, and you can't allow certain things. It's all over it's on the ancient civilization stuff, some of the paranormal stuff, and on UAPs. But what I didn't realise was how orchestrated it was, because I've heard people going about it for years, but I didn't quite. I mean, they're a group called the Guerrilla Skeptics. That's what they call themselves, and they've got 105 active editors who actively target UAP and all the other stuff. So it's not just a couple of people who've got a bit of a grudge. It's loads of them, right? And basically what you don't realise is editing on Wikipedia is voluntary. Yeah. So if you commit a load of time, you can get a lot of power and editing rights. And these people have been doing it for ages, over a decade. They set up their own pages. They set up the David Grush page so they could edit it, and they can set the rules. So they've established control over most of the pages in the topics we're interested in. And they're getting into all sorts of stuff. They've been removing people's titles and awards, like with Ross Coulthart, Journalist Awards, any titles they've got, any reference to the expertise they've got, removing any references to content or activities that they've done, stopping credible sources being cited, saying that they're all whatever, weird sources, pseudoscience. Then they make up their own dubious sources and cite them. So they'll write a blog, and then they stop anybody else editing the sites because they control them. They're using loads of derogatory terms like pseudoscience, and then they write all these partial narratives. And worst of all, any other editors who've come in to try and change it, they've actually threatened them with kicking them off and saying he's some sort of, poor editor and they can stop him editing it. It's just an absolute disgrace. Like you, Ash, if you did think they'd say, "Oh right, Ash, he's been working 4 years on the UAP settings. Right, we'll stop that. Oh, he does loads of investigations. Right, not now. Write a blog saying that he loves to chase after stories in the Sun. Yeah, then they'd cite that. If a professor praised your work, they'd knock that out, and so on and so forth. And it'd make it look like you just rolled out of your house on Sunday morning and spotted something a mile away and reported it. That's what it'd read like at the end, rather than all that thing. And I think it's absolutely disgraceful. I mean, what they were saying about Mick West, I don't want to. There's no proof it's him, so let's be clear. But there's a fella called Lucky Louie who does a lot of stuff, whose activities are strangely similar to Mick West's and the timing and how he writes loads of stuff on Mick West, uses the same language and all the rest of it. So he's a bit like the Superman, Clark Kent and Superman. You never see them together, but one another's clothes might be in the telephone box. You know what I mean? So it's one of them. He certainly tried to defend it at first, Mick West, and he started trying to downplay it. And for me, whatever side of the fence you're on, you can't support this kind of behaviour. He gets up my nose, Mick West, with some of his cherry-picking arguments, but I don't mind it. It's his right to make his comments. Yeah, but when he's supporting this kind of behaviour, which is effectively trying to win the argument by stealth without even having the argument, that is a different level for me. And it's at that point I don't want to engage, and I don't think people are entitled to engage in debate. Well, they're entitled to engage in debate. You shouldn't take them seriously. That's for me. And I just think it's in a democratic society, we cannot have this stuff. Wikipedia is such an important source of information. You cannot have these people, self-appointed, whatever ideologues, who think that they know best, taking out proper information. They're getting rid of proper, credible, neutral information. It's not they're getting rid of weird things. They're getting rid of, and that to me. So I think it's moved it to a whole new level, and I think Mick West should come out and condemn it if he really is against it. But I think he's one of that. I wrote Fellow Traveller, which is when you were talking maybe a bit extreme, but he's part of all this. They have conferences and everything, but they all laugh at us for going to conferences. They all go to pseudo whatever debunker conferences and all cheer each other and cheer about all these things they've done. And so it's a big movement. And it's absolutely, if their argument's so strong, why do they have to do this by stealth? And I would suggest that their argument isn't that strong. Anyway, so I was really shocked. And what Rob showed is it's systematic and it's targeted, not just a couple of people who you would expect, 2 or 3 people, and there you go, it's the mainstream establishment. This is active targeting, rewriting history. And think about this topic. Probably one of the most challenging topics humanity's ever faced. And we're going to have to think about some difficult things. And the last thing you need is a load of idiots sort of rewriting history and not letting you think about what the topics are. So, but Wikipedia is a law unto itself, I suppose. So it probably will carry on until unless people stopping contributing to them. That's the only thing that will make them stop. But apparently there's rumoured to be possible legal action as well. That would be great if that happened. But I think that might be struggle. But yeah, great Matt Ford picking it up and Rob's great work on this. And I think they must be a bit embarrassed because they thought they could get away with it and carry on forever. So I was really, really shocked, Frank, and really annoyed.
Yeah, I think it's I think it's a really big story, and I think a lot of credit to Rob Heatherly for doing the background work on looking into it all. And he did quite a long video on the Good Trouble Show on YouTube. If anybody wants to check out the full thing, well worth a look. If you just go to the Good Trouble Show, you'll find it, one of the recent episodes there. I think it's about 3 hours long, and they go through all of the websites they use to actually check all the edits that have been done, and even to some extent the methods that they use to actually obscure the amount of edits that they've done as well, to make it look as though it's not been as heavily influenced as it has. And yeah, very concerning. And speaking of rewriting history that you were talking about, another target of that is Graham Hancock, whose Wikipedia page describes him as pseudo-archaeologist Graham Hancock. The pseudoscience mentioned many times, and it's obviously trying to frame a particular person's work, a certain way before you even get into the body of the work. They've already sort of set it up. It's the same tactics that tabloids use when they're trying to take somebody down, isn't it? Untrustworthy Johnny Blogs. Well, nobody's going to really take him that seriously if you introduce him like that. Do you know what I mean? But anyway, I think my voice is on its last legs. I've done all right, actually. Towards the end, it's become a bit difficult, but we got there. So anybody got anything further to add?
No, I think we've covered it all. I think it was great. It's great to have Ash on again. I enjoyed that, and it's good to have the three of us just kicking it about a bit. I've really enjoyed it, and I think we've covered a lot of the key issues. So this month there was quite a lot happening. It feels quiet, but it hasn't been really. It's just it's like the calm before the storm, but even the calm, the waters are quite choppy. The swirls underneath those calm waters.
Indeed. Definitely. Right, well, we'll leave it there then for today, tonight, or whenever you're listening to this. And I look forward to next month, as ever. I'm sure if January's anything to go off, we'll probably have a lot to talk about when we get to the end of February again. So, hopefully. Never know. It might be a completely, quiet month, but we'll certainly see. Having said that, to be fair, we're already a few days in. Not too much is going on just yet, but maybe it's the calm before the storm, eh? Do you think we'll finally see Grush's op-ed this month?
I do. I definitely think it's coming out this month. But then again, who am I? What do I know? But I do think it's definitely coming out, and I think all this cobblers is related to it. I don't know, but that's my feeling. But I might be wrong. If I'm wrong, I'll just say I'm wrong, But I do think it'll be coming out this month. Something's got to come out to counter all this flack that they're putting up.
Well, we'll see. Hope it does. Then we'll have plenty to talk about on the next roundtable. All right. So we'll leave it there then. Thanks both. Pleasure as always.
Cheers, I really enjoyed it.
Yep. Nice one, guys. Nice one.
UFO Roundtable. The UFO Thinker and Pursuit of the Paranormal podcasts.